Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you today. I'm going to be talking about Alma Digital, which is Cardiff University's new digital platform for special collections and archives. Firstly, I'll say a bit about special collections. Some of you will remember that we started as a team of 3 back in 2005, but under Alan Hughes's leadership, we've been growing fast. So we are going to be 13 by the end of the summer. And we're now covering a very wide area of work, as you can see from the variety of the job descriptions there. So I trained as an archivist. I work with our unique and unpublished collections, so letters and diaries, notebooks, photos and objects. And I think that because I work so closely with totally irreplaceable, unique cultural heritage, it was probably inevitable that I would become very interested in ways of sharing these things digitally, because it is, after all, a huge privilege to travel to a university library that might be on the other side of the world and to feel comfortable and entitled to sit in their reading room and examine the only copy of a manuscript in existence. It is really important to me that as an institution, we work to extend that privilege and that sense of entitlement to anybody, anywhere, via digital access to cultural heritage. And this is what Alma Digital does. It stores images of our collections and it allows people anywhere in the world to view them for free. And as well as democratizing access in this way, we're also extending the life of our original collections. Some of them are obviously very fragile, so this is reducing the number of times that they are removed from storage and handled. Alma Digital is an ex libris product, so it's fully integrated with the library catalogue. And we've called our installation Digital Special Collections, or Casgliadau Arbennig Digital, because the platform is also available in Welsh. If you change your language settings, it's fully bilingual. And you can get to it from up in the header menu of the library catalogue. And if you click up there, you get this overview of everything that we've digitized that's grouped into collections and themes. There's books in there, there's archives, newspapers, photographs, and artworks. And as these collections grow, we can add sub-collections too. We can merge things, we can move things around. So as the content grows and evolves, we can change the way that it's arranged so that it continues to make sense for people that use it. And there are around 2,000 items in here at the moment, but we're adding more all the time. So you can find things here by browsing through the themes and collections, or you can just stumble across them if you're using the catalogue. So if you find an item that we've digitized, it will have a thumbnail attached to it, which will give you a preview of it, and you can just click through to see the digital versions right there in the record. If we have digitized something, its record will now have a collection path. So you see that right down at the bottom there. If you click on that, it will pull you into digital special collections and show you everything else that we've digitized that's related to that item. So you might not know that that's there. So it's quite a handy way to kind of link everything together. So just to summarise what's in here, the Cardiff Medical Officer reports, the student newspapers, the first World War I materials, they were produced years ago for Cymru 1914, the project with the National Library of Wales, which some of you might remember. And we started making that legacy content compatible with Alma and migrating that over. We had archives of some writers, musicians and artists. So there are archive records now in the library catalogue. And we also have a collection of some amazing photos from the Cardiff University Image Archive. And these are increasingly proving to be quite the goldmine for our social media accounts. Last term as well, we had some English literature students who were using the Edward Thomas archive on here. These are poetry archive, and they were working in groups to use the poems and letters and photos to research and produce short films based on his life and work. And that was a great opportunity for us to go and have a group of students check it out, test it for us, and give us some feedback. And they said that they liked how the content was sorted into these collections and sub-collections. It was sort of obvious where to find things. They liked that the interface was very familiar. They're used to using library search, and the fact that the information that they needed for citing, so the metadata was tied so closely to the images, they didn't have to look in two different places to link it all up. We have also created collections for the history of Wales, where we are storing anything digitized from the Salisbury Library, and another collection for Cardiff Rare Books. So those are our two major rare book collections. And we launched digital special collections on International Women's Day this year. So we wanted to release two important women's archives that have never been available digitally before. The first is the diaries of Priscilla Scott Ellis. She served as a nurse in the Spanish Civil War, and her diaries were edited and published nearly 30 years ago, but only up until the end of the war in 1939, because that was the editor's focus of interest. But the diaries actually continue on to her time living in London during the Blitz in the Second World War. So that chapter of her story can be shared now too. Her editor also left out large sections about Scott Ellis's personal life. They weren't seen as relevant to a war historian, but they are, of course, very significant for learning about women's history and experience. We also released some very rare books by the multi-talented artist Shirley Jones. She studied English literature at Cardiff University, and then she went on to art school. And she makes handmade books, by which I mean she makes the paper, she sets the type, engraves illustrations, prints pages, sews pages, and constructs the binding and the housing, and she does all of this by hand. So because of the extensive amount of work involved in this, she only produces a limited number of each of her books. So this, for example, you can see in the record, is one of only 12 copies in the world. Most of her books end up in private collections, so they're broadly very inaccessible to the wider public. Shirley approached us a few years ago to donate all of her personal copies of all of her works, on the condition that we digitize them and we make them publicly available. So we photographed them, but we never had anywhere to host the images that was good enough to do them justice, and now we do. So I am going to attempt to live demo from now on. See if I can switch over to my browser. Because it's really the best way to show you what this tool can do. So when you click on an item, the interface is all very familiar. You have the metadata down here and these links to open the image. So you get the option to open either a TIFF or a JPEG. The TIFFs are huge. They are high quality archival copies, but the smaller JPEGs are suitable for most things, and they take up less storage if people want to download, save them. However, if I open a TIFF, it loads as fast as a JPEG does, even though it's a much larger image, and I'll explain why this is later. So these images open in a tool called the Universal Viewer. It has preview thumbnails down the left-hand side, and it has a metadata panel here on the right. But in my opinion, the most exciting thing about this viewer is the zoom. It's really powerful and it really shows off our collections. So this quality means that we're able really to give people a sense of what they can get in the reading room, the physicality and materiality of the objects that we hold. You can see there the weave of cloth and the grain of leather. In many cases, you can see more detail in these images than you can with the naked eye. And it's really great for looking at manuscripts where you might want to zoom in close to make out some handwriting or maybe see where something has been crossed out. So if I zoom into here, I can make out just about on the other side written under that crossing out. So it's really, really useful to be able to get in that close. And now down in the corner, you have options for downloading at different sizes and specifications, and also for sharing and embedding. But I'm going to talk now about the significance of this logo, because we chose Alma Digital for two main reasons. Firstly was that it integrated with library search, but secondly, because it supports this, IIIF, which stands for the International Image Interoperability Framework. The National Library has been using IIIF for many years, but so far no other wealth members have adopted it. And so I'm going to explain a bit about what it is and hopefully tempt some of you to join us. Because IIIF can transform people's use of digital collections for teaching and research. It goes way beyond just putting images on the internet. So for a start, you have this deep zoom. And I mentioned those large TIFF files earlier. If you were to load a file like this in a standard browser, it would take ages because of the sheer size of the file, whereas within the viewer, they load quite quickly. I'm going to show you a really extreme example now of how IIIF gets around this problem of loading large images. This is Rembrandt's The Night Watch from the Rijksmuseum. It's a painting that's been photographed, obviously, but this painting that you're looking at now, this is not just one photograph, because the original artwork is several meters wide. It's actually been photographed 528 times, very, very close up. What you're looking at is a digital composite of those 500 odd photos. So when I zoom in and zoom in and zoom in, it just keeps getting more and more detailed until I am down to the individual brushstrokes in this painting. And the reason that this doesn't cause my browser to crash is that the IIIF framework applies coordinates to the individual pixels of an image, and that effectively divides the image up into very small digital tiles. So when someone zooms into an image area, only the pixels immediately surrounding the zoom are loaded. And that's what makes the image zoom in and out so smoothly and quickly. And if you look at the URL bar as I'm scrolling around, you can actually see the coordinates changing. So you see it updating there. So every section of this image exists as a separate digital entity. So why is this important? Well, if we can digitally fragment images in this way, it opens up more possibilities than just being able to load them quickly and zoom into minute details. We can use those digital coordinates to pinpoint a section of an image, and then we can use that URL to access just that section of the image from another location on the web. So I'll show you what I mean. If I copy the URL at this point and then open it up in a new tab, it loads just that section of the painting. So this is significant because if we can isolate a section of an image like this using a URL, we can add annotations or commentary to it and then reuse it anywhere else online. So there are lots of reasons why you might want to do this, maybe for teaching or exhibitions. You should kind of highlight areas of an object that you want to add commentary to. There are lots of free online tools that allow you to paste in a IIIF URL, zoom into areas of the object that you want to highlight or comment on, and then you can save the results as a kind of tour of the object. So I can show you a really simple example. This is Stories. It's a tool you can use with IIIF images to tag them and save the results. So I don't have to log in. This is online. I don't have to install anything. I don't have to pay anything. It's a free tool as well. So they've asked for my email, which is just to send me the results of what I make. So I've added the IIIF URL, which is a map of the USA. So I'm going to go and start editing this now. So it loads my map. And what I can do from here is zoom into anything that I want to comment on. I'm just going to do a simple one. So this could be any image, any commentary for any reason at all. Imagine how useful this would be for teaching. I'm just going to add a couple of tags in here so you get the idea. Maybe one more short one. Okay, so if I preview that now, what it's going to show me is the image that I've loaded, and then I'm going to be able to move through the tags that I've made. Let's move my Zoom window out of the way. And so here we are at Washington, and there's my second tag there, Wyoming, Arkansas, and Ohio. So it makes a really neat, really professional looking presentation, exhibition, teaching resource, what have you. Lots and lots of options there for student projects too. You know, these tools are free, are web-based, they're easy to use. Students can focus on interpreting objects rather than struggling to get to grips with a new piece of software. And, you know, it is important to underline the fact that people can't use these tools or this functionality without IIIF. So investing in Alma Digital has allowed us to unlock this potential. So we can zoom in and we can make annotated stories. The other important thing that we can do now is to responsibly release our images for reuse. So you saw that when I copied and pasted that link earlier, I just pasted it straight into the browser bar. It's up here. So yeah, it's not connected to the Rijksmuseum in any way. It's not embedded anywhere. It's just sort of free on the internet now. And I can do the same thing with ours. So if I take that zoomed in detail I was showing you earlier, and I share here, it knows exactly the point where I was looking at it in the viewer, and it opens it up in a fresh web page. And it hasn't opened it up in library search. It hasn't opened up within Cardiff University's jurisdiction. It's just wild on the internet now. But the thing that will always travel with it is this metadata here. These two are always linked to one another. So that means that if this goes out for adventures on the World Wide Web, it will always travel with this information that tells you what this object is, and where it came from, and what license applies to it. And the collection path is there as well. So somebody finding this online could say, oh, wow, this comes from Cardiff University. They have the Edward Thomas archive, and here's a bunch of poems I can go and look at. It's all linked up. And what this means is that people can always trace a path back to the repository, and it means that we can get over this idea of that we need to kind of gatekeep our collections because we're going to lose control of them if we digitize them. That's not going to happen with IIIF. Institutions can free their collections, but in a responsible way. And we've been trying this out recently during a student project. We've had a student making an annotated bibliography of Welsh literature in the Salisbury collection. The student who was working on this gave me a 36,000 word list of categorized books. And in the past, this probably would have had to have been presented as some kind of enormous blog post. But because we have this ability now to embed image viewers, I've been building it on a Xerti website where we can illustrate now what would have otherwise been kind of a rather dull list of books and present it more like an interactive learning resource. And the more libraries that use IIIF, the more opportunities there are for exciting international cross-institutional research. So you can use a free online tool like this to import IIIF images, no matter where the original objects are stored, so that you can compare things from different libraries side by side. So for instance, here you've got a painting from Harvard and a manuscript from the Bodleian. Both of these institutions use IIIF, so their images can be shared and compared easily. And this has countless applications in a research context. A lot of medieval scholars use IIIF to compare different versions of manuscripts, or to reunite them sometimes when pages of them have been sold separately at auction and they've ended up in different institutions. One thing that we could use this for is the Edward Thomas letters, because half of them are here with us in Cardiff and half of them are at the National Library in Aberystwyth. But because we both use IIIF now, I can add our letters and the National Libraries to this sort of digital workbench. And I can show you an example of how that's done. So if I open one of our items, I can clear this off, add my link, go to the National Library and find their set of Edward Thomas letters. Just load ours. Just a tiny bit slow on screen sharing. And this is the National Library's collection there. And then there they are, they're sitting side by side. So I'm now effectively in a virtual reading room where I can use both of these collections at the same time. And I recently saw a really good example of IIIF being used, not just to put images side by side, but to actually overlay them on top of one another. This is something that the V&A have done for their Raphael cartoons. And they have used infrared imaging to reveal the artist's original sketches under the paint layer. So not only can we zoom in here, but we can put the infrared layer on and slide it backwards and forwards. And so now you can reveal the sketch work that was done beneath the painting. So you can see there's been some reworking along the forehead line. They've also imaged the surface. So if you add this third layer on, you can see things like these little pin pricks appear. And this was the result of the designs being transferred onto tapestries in the past. So the surface of the painting was actually pierced with a pin to transfer those lines onto tapestries. And these are things that are only being discovered as a result of these technologies. So it's just a taste really of what is possible with IIIF. And the future is really exciting. So Cardiff University's collections aren't just online now, they're part of this international framework that is going to unlock them for meaningful engagement with digital scholars. And it can be used alongside collections as well by any other institution in the world that uses IIIF. And having access to this functionality has already opened a lot of doors for special collections. And it's partly the reason why we're recruiting more staff. We are a partner in the National Lottery funded crowdsourcing project with the National Library, Gwent and Glamorgan Archives, which is going to use IIIF to allow volunteers to tag and annotate collections. We're also a partner in a 3-year AHRC project with the University of Wyoming, and that's going to use IIIF to support cutting-edge research into computer-based image recognition and classification. And I've recently been granted an RL UK fellowship for a year where I'll be doing further work with Alma Digital and with IIIF to promote its use for digital humanities, which is something I think that we need to be doing more of at Cardiff. And apparently the university agrees, because Special Collections has just been awarded $250,000 to invest in high-end digitization equipment. This is going to allow us to set up a research hub for the digital humanities. And none of these partnerships and opportunities would have been possible without this initial investment in IIIF functionality. So really, it is just the beginning. So thank you so much to you all for listening. And please, if you get a chance to go and explore the collections and let us know what you think, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks very much.